Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and in today's video I'm talking about all of the books I read in the month of January. Now in January, the impression I was getting from the books I was reading that it was a very meh reading month. I was like, oh, I'm not loving anything very much. It just feels very middle of the road. But once I put together all of the books that I'd read and kind of ordered them by star rating, I realized actually I had a lot of really great reads this month. So in this video, I'm going to be doing a low, medium, high type categorization. So I'm going to first talk about all the books I rated lowly. So anything in the 1 to 2 star range. And then in the middle tier, I'm talking about books that were just okay to me, and maybe 3 stars. And then in the high tier, I'm going to be talking about all the books that I gave 4 and 5 star reads, to just kind of highlight that I had a really great reading month and I had a lot more highs than I did mid and low tier. So let's get started and talk about the low tier first of all. The only book that I rated a 1.5 star was This Town Sleeps by Dennis E. Staples, and I am really sad about this one. This is what it actually is a literary fiction novel set in Minnesota with a dash of magical realism, written by a Minnesota Indigenous man. And this has to do with kind of a gay Indigenous man and his tumultuous relationship with his mother and his gay relationship with his partner. And how tumultuous that is, as well as grappling with a death that happened in the past. I don't like literary fiction. I just don't. It doesn't do anything for me. And this one in particular, I didn't think was executed very well. We have a lot of points of view in this book this book is only 5 hours on audio, and we have so many points of view that it didn't feel fully fleshed out or developed, or those points of view didn't feel like they were integral to the story. The gay romance in this is really tumultuous and problematic, in my opinion. So go into this cautiously if you're interested, but I just didn't think this literary fiction did anything for me in particular, and I didn't like the execution of it. So I'm gonna move on. So now we're gonna talk about the mid-tier level books, anything I rated like in the 3 star range. The first book we're gonna talk about is the sci-fi mystery novel, The Spare Man by Mary Robinette Kowal. I have loved this author in the past, and while I enjoyed this murder mystery, it was just okay overall. I loved the sci-fi elements in here. We're following a main character, Tesla Crane. She is on a honeymoon with her partner, and they are going to Mars on their honeymoon. And so they're on basically a cruise ship, a space cruise ship. And a murder happens on the cruise ship, and her husband is implicated in the murder. And so she's like trying to solve it. There were a couple of issues in here that I need to talk about. First of all is Tesla is heavily disabled, uses a cane, and has a service animal who is a Westie, very cute, named Giblet, which I really liked. But Tesla is also extremely wealthy and is an heiress and kind of flaunts her wealth to not only get the accommodations she needs for her disability, but also to throw around her wealth and power to force people to do what she wants in terms of the murder investigation. And it's a little frustrating because she does in fact acknowledge her privilege as a white woman who is extremely wealthy. She does not acknowledge that, but she doesn't take it a step further to acknowledge the privilege it is to have the medical technology that she has for her disability. She actually has a special implant that basically pumps drugs into her system whenever she needs it for her condition, which awesome, cool sci-fi element, but she can basically maneuver life very easily because of that. And I wish the author had gone into a little bit of detail on how she got this implant, how much it cost, and the like wealth disparity, because Wouldn't it be great if you could just get your medications whenever you needed them and you had complete control of your meds at all times as a disabled person? And we really didn't discuss the disability in this book at all. It just seemed kind of like a prop for Tesla's character that was used when it was convenient for the story and the plot. The last thing I will say about The Spare Man is that it is very queer inclusive, and there are a lot of characters that use all sorts of pronouns, have all sorts of appearances, and are racially diverse and queer diverse as well. So I did appreciate that about The Spare Man. Overall, this was a 3-star read. The big reveal on whodunit was pretty weak in my opinion, and I only ended up giving this a 3-star in the end. Next, we have Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. This was the first book I finished in 2023, and this was okay. I have a full vlog with lots of thoughts and feelings if you'd like to watch that. Next, we have a 3.5-star read, which is The Bone Maker by Sarah Beth Durst. This is about our main character, Kriya, who 25 years in the past, she and her team of heroes defeated the evil necromancer, and then they all kind of went their separate ways. And in that encounter, she lost her husband. So Kriya is on a mission now 25 years later to resurrect her husband, and also she needs to get the band back together because the evil necromancer may have survived that final encounter and may be back to cause additional harm. This has casual queerness, a found family vibe, and it was really nice to see like older protagonists. These characters are probably somewhere in their 40s because they're, you know, kind of getting the band back together after saving the world one time. So those are all things I really appreciated about this book. The reason I didn't love this book as much is because I think it had some pacing issues, but overall I still had a great time with this like adventure story getting the band back together. The last mid-tier book we're going to talk about is Arcanum Unbounded, the Cosmere Collection by Brandon Sanderson. This is a chunky short story collection, which I have qualms with, and this was a 3.5 as an overall collection. There are some standouts in here and some stories that really disappointed me. The reason I have qualms with calling this a short story collection is because most of these are novellas, or at least there are 2 very long novellas in here that are in the 200 to 70 page mark, so they're almost novels in and of themselves, and so they just dominate the collection, if you get what I mean. So there are some standouts in here for me. Personally, I thought The Emperor's Soul, which is in the same world as Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, was phenomenal and actually made me choke up a little bit. It was surprisingly emotional for a 120 page story. I thought that one was excellent, and that won a Hugo Award, and I think it's really deserving of it. However, there is one story in here particularly that I think you should actively avoid. If you are a Cosmere fan, please do not read The Secret History. For me, The Secret History really changed and altered my opinion of the original Mistborn trilogy, which I really, really despise. The Emperor's Soul was like a 5-star read for me. And then we had some misses, which The Secret History was a 1-star read for me. We got the whole range of ratings in this one collection for me. Now we're finally talking about the high tier, things I rated 4 stars and above, and I have quite a few of them. The first and probably the most surprising 4-star read for me was Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. This isn't surprising because I love Talia Hibbert, but it is because this is a young adult contemporary romance, and even when I was a teenager, I did not like young adult contemporary romances. I was like, where's the dragons? Where's the fantasy? I don't care about these teenagers at summer camp, like, doing things. Like, I didn't care even when I was a teenager. But I decided to trust Talia Hibbert, and I'm so glad I did. This was utterly delightful. This is about Bradley Graham, who is a bisexual soccer star with OCD, and his ex-best friend, Selena. And Selena is a conspiracy theorist TikToker, which I think is hilarious. And these two used to be best friends, and they had a massive falling out several years before the story takes place, and this is about them coming back together as friends and lovers. Friends to enemies to lovers romance. And they have to work together because they are competing for a scholarship to go to university. And the task they have to do is like wilderness survival. I thought this had great representation, great friendships, and great banter, which is one of Talia Hibbert's strengths, and I think shines throughout this book as well as in her other books that I've read by her. This was a 4-star read. I really liked this. Another surprising read, which was another romance, but this is an adult Achillean Christmas romance, and that's You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince by Timothy Janofsky. So the reason this is surprising is because for the first 100 pages of this book, I was really unsure about it. I had a lot of qualms, but then all of those issues that I had with the first 100 pages of the book were addressed in the latter part of the book. This is about Matthew Prince, who is a super wealthy person who gets essentially cut off from his fortune because he bought a private island, and his parents were mad about him, so they sent him to his grandparents' house for the month of December as kind of a punishment, and they live in like a cabin in a small town. And there Matthew meets our love interest Hector, who is staying with his grandparents, helping them around the house, and then he also goes to the university in the small town. So the couple of issues that I had with this book was there is a power dynamic between someone who is uber wealthy and someone who is incredibly dirt poor, as well as a little bit of issues between having a white character who is super wealthy versus Hector, who is Puerto Rican and, darker skinned. And there is also an element of privilege in that Matthew is gay versus Hector, who is bisexual, and notoriously bisexual men are not as accepted in society as gay men. And I am happy to report that all three of those big qualms were addressed by Matthew, and he acknowledged his privilege as a wealthy white gay man in relation to Hector, which I was really surprised by, and I'm so glad that this was in here. And the other part is that when the third act conflict happens, Matthew goes to therapy to work through his emotions, and I'm so happy that that representation was there. Matthew also has like crippling anxiety at times, and we really are in his head the whole time. This is a single point of view, by the way. We are in his head a lot, and we really delve deeply into that anxiety. So content warning for deep anxiety representation in this one. Overall, this was cute. The relationship between Matthew and his grandparents, and even Hector with this little like found family, was very sweet and uplifting. The Christmas elements were fun, and I was actually just majorly surprised by what this book set out to do and how it handled it. So this is a 4-star read for me. I finally read All Systems Red by Martha Wells, which is the first novella in the Murderbot Diaries series. This is about an AI cyborg person. This is about Murderbot, who named itself that, and Murderbot uses it pronouns, and it is on a mission, and the humans that it is trying to protect come under threat, and so this is about how Murderbot protects them and gets them out of that dangerous situation. That's all I will say about the plot of this one. This was a lot of fun because Murderbot as a protagonist and as our narration is so funny, and all Murderbot wants to do is watch soap operas and be sarcastic and pessimistic and just do its own thing, which I really, really enjoy. I love AI characters, and I think the way that this character was portrayed was really, really fun, and its characterization was excellent. The thing I found interesting about this is Murderbot's kind of like a fancy cyborg, so it's not like completely robotic. It has like fleshy parts and robotics and an AI system, and it feels pain and it feels emotions, but it has like computer software and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a fancy cyborg, and I thought how the exploration of humanity through the lens of Murderbot, I really liked that exploration. This is an action-heavy novella, but I really enjoyed it overall, and I think I will continue this series. I have a genuine question, though, about asexual representation as it pertains to robots. So Murderbot makes a comment to itself about how it doesn't have any genitalia and doesn't enjoy sex scenes on its soap operas and doesn't find sex to be anything interesting to it. Is that good representation for ace people? I think that kind of dehumanizes asexual people because there's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing robotic about their aceness, if you know what I mean. So I'm genuinely curious if anyone is ace out there and has thoughts about how representation for ace individuals is portrayed in media, and if you consider this type of representation good or neutral or bad. I'm genuinely curious. The nonfiction tome that I read this month was Medical Apartheid by Harriet A. Washington. This was horrifying. This is about the medical experimentation and torture of Black individuals since slavery times all the way up to today for the purposes of medical experimentation and progress. And obviously this was horrifying. This is reading torture over and over and over again of Black people and learning about the origins of some of these barbaric medical practices that are still in place today. And there is still experimentation on Black folks happening today. This book was written in 2007. I would really like to revisit this author and hope that she adds, maybe writes a new book about, 2007 to modern times, because obviously this was a little outdated in that it was talking about things that were currently happening at the time when the book went to publishing. But I gave this a 4.5 stars. This is a great book. It was just horrifying to read, and I will continue to delve deeply into these types of topics to understand and learn and grow in my anti-racism. On a lighter note, a 4.25 star rating book is The Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake. This is the sequel to The Atlas 6, which is a book I read in 2021 and really quite enjoyed. I actually have a full review up for the first book in this series on my channel if you would like to watch that. Not getting too much into the sequel, I really enjoyed this. This is more of the same character dynamics that were established in book 1, which I particularly enjoyed. Everyone is insufferable and everyone is gay, and you can ship every single character with everybody else, which is a lot of fun. Issues that I had with this book is that there were some character motivations that I thought were a little unclear. There's a character named Rena who is from book 1 as well, who I don't totally get her. And that's fine. I don't need to understand every character motivation, but her point of view was a little hard for me personally to track. And then there are an additional set of points of view that add to the story, but it's just not my favorite because we already have 6 points of view characters from book 1, and so all of them get a point of view in this book. as well as more on top of that. So it just seemed like a lot to me. Overall, I really enjoyed the sequel, and I can't wait for the conclusion. I also read the short story, The Sacred Hospitality, that goes along with this series, which is a very short story prequel about all these characters before the events of book one, and I thought this was pretty good. This was a 4-star read. I really think this is great Nico and Libby content if you like those characters in particular. Last and best, to be honest, was Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I never know what I'm gonna get when I pick up a Brandon Sanderson, and I try to go in with tempered expectations, but this even exceeded all of my very low medium expectations. This is about our main character, Tress, who goes off on an adventure to save her childhood best friend from an evil sorceress. And this is set on a whole different planet where the seas are made of spores that can kill you when wet. And they travel on ships that can sail the spore seas. This was delightful. The narrator of this story is a character we have seen repeatedly throughout Brandon Sanderson's other works, so if you know this character, it's kind of a fun Easter egg to get to know him a little better through his narration of this story. However, I don't think you need to read the other Cosmere books to enjoy this narration style. It's extremely whimsical and funny and flippant, and it feels like a fairy tale retelling. It feels very comforting and classic in a way. But at the same time, it also subverts a lot of classic fairy tale tropes and kind of flips them on their head. Another thing I really appreciated about this book is the deaf representation. We have a side character who is fully deaf, and he speaks with a board that can translate what people are saying to him, so he can read what they say, and then he can basically like compute a response, which I thought was really cool. But also in his own community, in a community of deaf individuals, he does also sign. And at the end of the book, this really isn't a spoiler, the crew of the ship is learning sign language to be more inclusive, to include this character, which I just absolutely love. This has hijinks, this has found family, this is an adventure story, and this was just so much fun. This is a one-off Cosmere story, and so there aren't really a ton of spoilers necessarily for the Cosmere, but there is one particular reference that I think you won't understand unless you read the Mistborn Era 1 trilogy first. Like, I think you'll be fine and you won't get spoiled for anything, but I think you just won't understand. But that's the only series or book of his that I think you could read first before you dive into this. I think anyone could enjoy this. This was so different from Brandon Sanderson. This is a side of his writing that we haven't yet to see, and I really hope that he continues to branch out and explore the art of storytelling in different ways like this book does. That is it. Those are all the books I read in January, the highs, the lows, and the books in the middle. What do you think? Have you read any of these books? I would love to know your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below. And I hope you have a great reading month in February. Happy Black History Month. I will be reading lots of books written by Black authors. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon. Bye.